The evening was alive with the kind of energy only a live television taping could create. Studio lights shimmered across a sleek set decorated with gold accents and plush seating. The audience buzzed with excitement. After all, it wasn't every night that Andy Cohen hosted Mariah Carey. The pop icon herself had arrived in true Mariah fashion, glittering gown that caught every camera flash, diamonds dancing across her wrists, and that unmistakable smile that said she knew she was the moment. As she walked out to thunderous applause, Andy rose from his seat, beaming. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced dramatically, "the one and only, Mariah Carey." Mariah waved elegantly, taking her seat with a composed smile. "Thank you, darling," she purred, her voice smooth as silk. Always nice to see some real excitement in the room. The crowd laughed and cheered again. It was the kind of start producers dream of: chemistry, charisma, and that unspoken tension that promised good television. Andy began light, tossing soft questions about her upcoming Christmas concert series, her Las Vegas residency, and her new holiday special. Mariah was in her element, offering witty quips, perfectly timed laughs, and even breaking into a brief, playful hum of "All I Want for Christmas Is You," which sent the audience into delighted chaos. The mood was buoyant, effortless, until Andy shifted gears. "So, Mariah," he began with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes, "you've been called a diva for decades now. Some people love it, others, not so much. Do you embrace that label, or is it something you've grown tired of?" There it was, the kind of question Andy was famous for. A little dangerous, a little baiting. Mariah's expression didn't falter, but her eyes narrowed just slightly, the shimmer of her confidence now edged with caution. "Darling," she said slowly, "I think people use that word when they don't know how to describe power. I work hard, I know what I like, and I don't apologize for it." The crowd erupted with applause, sensing the tension but rallying behind her. Andy chuckled, raising his hands as if to surrender. "Fair enough," he said. But then, unable to resist, he pressed further. "Of course," he continued casually, "some of your former team members might say you take the word diva to another level. I mean, there have been stories, long delays on set, certain demands backstage, that kind of thing. Are those exaggerated?" Mariah's smile froze just enough for the cameras to catch it. She leaned back slightly, one manicured finger tapping her leg. "You mean rumors," she said coolly. "People love to tell stories, Andy. It gives them something to talk about. But I don't entertain nonsense." The audience murmured, feeling the tension rise. Andy laughed nervously, trying to play it off. "Oh come on, Mariah, you know I have to ask. It's what the people want to know." "No," she said, tilting her head with an icy kind of poise. "It's what you want to ask, because you think it makes good TV. But there's a difference between curiosity and disrespect." A hush fell over the studio. Andy shifted in his seat, clearly surprised at the firmness in her tone. For a brief moment, his trademark confidence wavered. But instead of retreating, he doubled down. "I mean, you have to admit, you've walked off interviews before," he said with a forced laugh. "Should I be worried you'll leave this one too?" The remark landed like a spark in dry grass. Mariah blinked, her lips curving into a faint, dangerous smile. "You shouldn't worry, darling," she said slowly, "unless you plan on giving me a reason to." The crowd let out a low ooh, half amused, half stunned. Andy laughed again, but the sound felt thin. No, I'm just joking. You know I love you." Mariah crossed one leg over the other, her demeanor shifting from playful guest to queen reclaiming her throne. "Love," she said softly, "comes with respect. And if you had any, we'd be talking about the music, the art, the journey, not the gossip." Andy tried to redirect, fumbling for a lighter tone. All right, let's talk about your music then. But isn't the legend of Mariah Carey part of the music? The persona, the glamour, the humanity," she interrupted. "That's what people forget. I've been in this business for decades. I've earned my piece, Andy. I don't need to justify my existence on your cue cards." The words landed with such quiet power that even the production crew paused. The audience didn't know whether to clap or hold their breath. Andy sat back, blinking. It was rare for anyone to challenge him so directly, especially on his own show. But Mariah wasn't finished. She leaned forward, voice steady and cutting. "You build your career on stirring things up, and that's fine. But I don't play into narratives designed to make women, especially successful women, look like villains just for knowing their worth. That did it, The crowd applauded thunderously now, sensing the line had been crossed. Andy's smile faltered. He tried to pivot, but Mariah had already begun removing her microphone. "Mariah, wait," he said quickly, but she stood, smoothing her gown with regal calm. "No, darling, I think we're done here. I came here to celebrate music, not defend myself against tired stories." The room fell silent except for the faint click of her heels against the stage floor. Each step was deliberate, echoing in the stunned quiet. The cameras stayed locked on her as she walked past the audience, head held high, diamonds glinting under the studio lights. Andy sat frozen, unsure whether to chase after her or move to commercial. The audience broke into scattered applause, half out of shock, half in awe. Mariah didn't look back once. As she disappeared behind the curtain, Andy finally exhaled. "Well," he said awkwardly, forcing a smile, "I guess that's one for the history books." The audience laughed uncertainly, but the moment had already slipped beyond his control. Backstage, producers rushed in every direction, phones buzzing, voices raised. They knew what had just happened. It wasn't just a walk-off, it was a cultural flashpoint. Within minutes, clips would surface online, hashtags would explode, and debates would rage across every social platform. But Mariah didn't care about any of that. As she entered her dressing room, her assistant followed closely, asking if she wanted to return for damage control. She simply waved a hand. "No, baby, let them talk," she said with calm authority. "They always do." She sat down, removed her heels, and smiled faintly at her reflection in the mirror. "He wanted a moment," she murmured, "and I gave him one. Just not the one he expected." Back in the studio, Andy tried to smooth over the chaos with charm, but the spark was gone. The cameras caught him glancing toward the empty seat beside him, the sequined cushion gleaming where Mariah had once sat. He forced a laugh and turned to the audience. "Well," he said, shrugging lightly, "you never know what's going to happen live, do you?" But everyone in that room, and soon, everyone watching across the world, knew exactly what had happened. Mariah Carey had once again reminded everyone why she wasn't just a star, but a force. And when the moment came to choose between spectacle and self-respect, she chose the latter, walking away not in anger, but in absolute control. The studio remained in an uneasy silence long after Mariah Carey vanished backstage. The audience, still processing what they'd just witnessed, exchanged wide-eyed glances. A few people started to clap, half-hearted at first, then louder, until it became a strange, confused mix of cheers and gasps. Andy Cohen sat frozen in his seat, his smile trembling under the weight of what had just happened. The show's floor manager signaled for a commercial break, the red, on-air, light flicked off, and the set erupted into chaos. Producers rushed onto the stage, whispering to Andy, who still looked dazed. "What just happened?" one of them hissed, glancing toward the backstage corridor. "Did she just walk out for real?" Andy rubbed his temples, muttering something about how it was just a question, but even he knew he'd pushed too far. The control room was a blur of voices, directors shouting camera orders, editors replaying the footage, and social media interns already clipping the dramatic moment for online promotion. Backstage, Mariah's entourage formed a protective bubble around her. Her longtime manager, Stella, was visibly upset, pacing the narrow hallway. "They ambushed you, Mimi," she said sharply. "That wasn't an interview. That was a setup." Mariah, meanwhile, was composed, perhaps too composed. She sat in front of her mirror, still in her glittering gown, one hand resting on her chin. The faint shimmer of her highlighter caught the dressing room lights, and though her reflection looked every bit the untouchable diva, her eyes betrayed a flicker of exhaustion. "It's always the same story," she said quietly. "They ask about my music, but they really just want headlines. I've spent my whole life giving everything to this industry, and somehow I'm still reduced to a punchline." Her makeup artist, brushing at the corner of her eye, murmured, "You handled it with grace." Everyone saw that. Mariah smiled faintly. "Grace," she repeated, as if testing the word. "That's all I have left sometimes." Outside, a producer knocked nervously. "Miss Carey, Andy wanted to personally apologize if you'd be willing to." Before he could finish, Stella opened the door and gave him a look that could cut glass. "She's done. No more cameras, no more questions." The producer nodded quickly and retreated down the hall, phone already buzzing with network messages. Meanwhile, out on social media, the world was exploding. Clips of the walk-off were already circulating, captioned with phrases like, "Mariah Carey puts Andy Cohen in his place," and "Queen leaves the stage with dignity." The hashtags #Mariah walks off and #Queen of Class began trending within minutes. Fans were posting slowed-down clips of her standing up, her gown shimmering as she delivered that now iconic line, "I don't need to sit here and let someone who profits off gossip tell me who I am." Even people who hadn't watched the show were suddenly invested. TikTokers created dramatic edits of the moment, splicing it with her song, "Hero." Twitter, or rather, X, turned the exchange into memes, some defending Andy, but most praising Mariah's composure. One viral tweet read, "She didn't storm off. She glided out like royalty leaving a cheap throne." By midnight, the incident had made headlines across every entertainment outlet. News, Variety, and People ran front-page stories dissecting the confrontation. The debate was instantaneous: was Andy out of line, or was Mariah too sensitive? But for most fans, there was no debate at all. The consensus was clear: Mariah Carey had shown restraint and self-respect in the face of provocation. At home later that night, Andy sat with his producer, reviewing the footage. "Do I look bad?" he asked, his tone half joking, half anxious. The producer hesitated. "It's not great," she admitted. "You pushed her too hard. The audience isn't going to like it." Andy sighed, rubbing his forehead. "I was just doing my job. It's not like I insulted her." "But you didn't listen," the producer said gently. "She gave you an out, and you kept poking." He leaned back, groaning. "Guess I underestimated how fast this would blow up." The next morning, his phone buzzed nonstop. Texts from friends, journalists, and publicists flooded in. Some offered support, others thinly veiled criticism. The network released a brief statement calling it an unexpected live moment, but damage control was already in full swing. Andy's team urged him to apologize, fast. By noon, he went live on Watch What Happens Live for a short statement. "Mariah Carey is a legend," he said sincerely. "Last night's interview went places I didn't expect, and I take full responsibility for pushing too hard. She's an icon and deserves all the respect in the world." But Mariah didn't respond publicly. Not with words, anyway. Later that day, she posted a single image to Instagram, a breathtaking photo of her walking backstage in the very moment she left the set. The caption, just one word, "unbothered." The post detonated online. Millions liked it within hours. Celebrities began commenting. Jennifer Hudson left a crown emoji, Kelly Clarkson wrote, "Queen energy always," and even Oprah chimed in with, "Grace under fire." It was clear who had won the public's heart. Backstage sources leaked that Mariah had refused to return to the show or issue any joint statement. "She said what she said," a member of her team reportedly told TMZ. "She doesn't owe anyone an explanation." The defiance only fueled her mystique. Meanwhile, talk shows and podcasts debated the fallout for days. Some called it the diva moment of the decade. Others praised her for standing up to a culture of media provocation. One viral YouTube commentary put it perfectly: Mariah Carey didn't walk off because she's a diva, she walked off because she's done performing for disrespect. Behind the scenes, however, Mariah's inner circle celebrated the unexpected boost. Her streaming numbers skyrocketed by nearly 40% overnight. Pre-orders for her holiday album soared. Fans old and new were revisiting her catalog, posting clips of her legendary performances with captions like, "She's earned the right to walk away." But for Mariah, none of it was about numbers. She spent the following evening quietly at home, sipping tea while her twins played piano in the background. When her assistant mentioned how the internet was on fire for her, she just smiled. "Let them talk," she said softly. "They always do, but I'll never let them tell my story for me." Her words were calm, but they carried the weight of someone who'd weathered decades of public scrutiny and still stood tall. Mariah understood that walking away wasn't weakness, it was mastery. The true power, she believed, wasn't in dominating the stage, but in knowing when to leave it. Over the next week, Andy avoided further comment, clearly aware that every word would only fan the flames. He shifted the tone of his next few shows, opting for friendlier, lighter interviews, but the shadow of the Mariah moment lingered. It became a cultural checkpoint, a reminder that even in the entertainment industry's storm of spectacle and spin, authenticity still mattered. Months later, when Mariah appeared on another talk show, the host asked, carefully, about the incident. Mariah laughed, elegant and unbothered as ever. "Oh, darling," she said with a wink, "I just know when it's time to exit the stage." The audience roared with applause. And in that instant, it was clear, Mariah Carey hadn't lost anything from that night. She'd reminded the world of something vital, that power isn't loud, it isn't petty, and it doesn't need to explain itself. Sometimes, true strength is found in the silence after the storm, in the sound of high heels clicking away from chaos. And as the headlines faded and the world moved on, one truth remained timeless: Mariah Carey didn't just walk off Andy Cohen's show. She walked into another unforgettable chapter of her legend, graceful, unshaken, and still reigning as the undisputed queen of her own story.